This is episode 1 in a series looking at a new program called Wolfram Alpha and looking at some ways in which it might be useful in psychiatry. This is exploratory and other people might be able to generate creative solutions to looking at applications in psychiatry. In this episode, I'm going to be focusing on a very basic approach to using Wolfram Alpha, which simply involves entering some diagnostic labels into the search box and seeing what is returned. So first of all, what I'm going to do is find the International Classification of Diseases, ICD-10, and I'm going to select F00 to F99, mental and behavioural disorders, and I'm going to go to F00 to F09, organic disorders, and I'm going to select the first term there for my search, which is dementia in Alzheimer's disease. So I'm going to go to Google, going to type in Wolfram Alpha. I'm going to see the home page, which tells us that Wolfram Alpha is the first step in an ambitious long-term project to make all systematic knowledge immediately computable by anyone. So what they say is you enter your question or calculation, and Wolfram Alpha uses its built-in algorithms and growing collection of data to compute the answer. So what they're doing is returning quantitative answers to questions. So we found the term from ICD-10, so let's type this in and see what this returns. So there are two results from this search. I'm going to click on the first one and see what we've got here. This is copyable plain text, so I'm not able to do anything with that. It's not expandable, it's not a link to other sites, so really this is the limit of the search that this term has returned. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to deselect these two terms and I'm going to try again with Alzheimer's disease. Now this time we get something slightly more interesting. We get mortality results for the United Kingdom and world mortality totals beneath that. So I'm going to have a look at this number of deaths, and again this is producing copyable plain text, which means that I can't expand upon this information. This is the limit of the information that I have access to from this search. So the first question I've got really is, where is this information coming from? Now if we go down to the bottom of the screen here, we see that there's some source information, so I'm going to click on this and we get another window coming up. And what this does is shows us that there are two sources of information, the primary source and the background sources with references. So let's go up to the primary source. I presume that this is the main source of information for performing the calculations. Now I'm going to click on that, and what happens is that it disappears. I'll click again just to make sure I haven't missed something, and again this is the limits of what we're seeing. So I think the first point I would make is that it would be useful to know what information the search engine is using to obtain these results, to perform these calculations on. Numbers, quantitative results, quantitative analysis is dependent on the information coming in, and particularly on the quality of that information. So at the moment we're drawing a blank. This data is really non-transparent. It's not clear how good a quality this information is. If we go beneath, we see the background sources and references. I'm going to click on that. Now on this immediate page that I've been referred to, I can't see any obvious reference to Alzheimer's disease, so it looks as though I'm going to have to explore this site to locate the information that's given as a background source. But there's another point about the background sources and references, and that point is given below. This list is intended as a guide to sources of further information. The inclusion of an item in this list does not necessarily mean that its content was used as the basis for any specific Wolfram Alpha result. So the problem that we have here is there are two sources of information that are being used in the calculations. One of them is non-transparent as far as I can tell, and the second is a group of sources of information, some of which might not even be used to perform those calculations. Now, what I would find more interesting is if I entered the term Alzheimer's disease and the knowledge engine returned some raw data in a presentable format and gave me some options about how it would go about analysing this. For people used to working with information, for scientists and people in other disciplines using information, I think it's quite important to see the data sources, to know more about them, and to be able to assess the quality of information, and to have some degree of control over how that information is analysed, or at least to understand the workings. So for instance, for these statistics, have the data sources been aggregated? Is that the appropriate thing to do? We just don't know at this point. So in summary, the knowledge engine returns results not for dementia in Alzheimer's disease, but for Alzheimer's disease, and produces some figures, what look like descriptive statistics, but we don't know much about the data source, and we don't know much about really what kind of analysis was being performed.